Welcome to I Have Some Questions. The show is all about asking questions our guests have never asked themselves before, never thought about, or been too afraid to explore. It's designed to uncover the human story at the root of successes and failures and help us as an audience learn and grow from that story. My hope is that you'll hear brilliant guests exploring new ideas and challenging themselves in new ways of thinking. I think this makes for great conversations. I'm going to bring on entrepreneurs, authors, coaches, scientists, and frankly, any vein of super interesting, successful, and passionate human I can find. I am fascinated by passionate people, and I have some questions for them. I'm Erik Berglund, and I hope you'll join me every week for new episodes. Welcome back to the show. I'm Erik Berglund, your host, and my guest today is Relentless Chris Jones. You can check out his website, relentlesschrisjones.com. Chris is a multi-time entrepreneur. He's built 6 companies, most of them successful, he says. He's a best-selling author with his book, Relentless AF, An Entrepreneur's Disaster to Success Story. And by the way, that AF doesn't mean what you think it means, even though it's pretty well titled as is. He's also an expert EOS Implementer. That's the entrepreneurial operating system. He's worked with over 75 companies and ran more than 600 full-day sessions in his decade career doing EOS. He's married to his wife, Yolanda, for 27 years. He's got 2 sons who he loves and are amazing, Derek and Trey. This is a guy who has some deep thoughts about what it takes to be simultaneously relentless and fun. And those are 2 words that we don't tend to combine very often. They're a real juxtaposition. Chris and I go deep into what it takes to be relentless and how challenging that can be. This was an awesome episode. I loved doing it, and I hope you'll take the time to dig into it. Please welcome Chris Jones and enjoy the episode. Appreciate you taking the time. Chris, thanks for coming on. I guess one of my biggest questions, having checked out your website a little bit more, is you have this focus on relentless and fun. Like those 2 words are paired together for you, and that's not a normal combination. I kind of want to dive into that. Like, what does it mean to be relentless?
Yeah, so I think relentless probably came pretty naturally to me. I think it was my hardwiring was to find a way to get stuff done and like just go until completion, I guess. You know, sometimes that meant I broke, but often not, but just go like crazy and be super intense and passionate and just like at my core, that's who I am. And then what I learned was like, oh, but I also love having this fun side of me, and I thought they were mutually exclusive. So there was the fun goofball side of me, and then there was like the intense passionate side, and they usually didn't coexist at the same time. And so, you know, and the relentless side to a fault, right? Like I would chase people out of my way, off, you know, wasn't a great teammate because I was so over the top intense. And then, you know, the goofball fun side of me, people are like, oh, that's a ton of fun to be around. But I also got nothing done when I was in that headspace. And then the journey of a coach really helped me understand, like, who am I authentically at my core? And I'm like, why did these 2 things need to be mutually exclusive? And I'm like, well, what if it all came together in one thing? And I'd chosen the name for my book, Relentless AF, already. And then right as I'm writing the book and really getting to the core of who I am, I'm like, well, actually, kind of one of the magic things I figured out was the merging of these 2 concepts of like, can I be intense and passionate and have a shit ton of fun all at the same time? And I'm like, oh, and I even have the title Relentless AF. It's just and fun. And so that was really the evolution of that concept. I'm like, oh, it's right there. So I actually rewrote elements of the book just to weave the 2 concepts together. And it was really what it was all about for me.
That's funny. I checked out the book title earlier and I had not put together the AF as fun, obviously, but I like that worked that well. Hey, real quick, just from a logistical standpoint, I'm going to shut our cameras off just due to bandwidth. I don't think it's going to serve us to have video here. So I'm just going to shut those both off here and we could just carry.
Okay. Should I do the same?
Yeah, I'm going to do it for you here. There we go. That's just going to save the bandwidth a little bit. It was getting a little blotchy. So you identified that in yourself, that relentless and fun combination, but you work with business owners and entrepreneurs. You You have this influence in other people, and I've got to think that those are characteristics that you look for in businesses and you help try to develop. So I want to go back to my core question, which is like, what does it actually mean to be relentless?
Yeah, I think relentless for me is about really being unsettled with average. And I think I just read The Comfort Crisis. Love that book. And right in, like, everyone is in a pursuit of comfort, or a lot of people are in pursuit of comfort right now. And that's just not who I am. It's never who I've been. And so I'm looking to connect with leaders that are like, I'm really uncomfortable. We're the best in our industry, but I know we could be a lot better. There's a lot on the table, and I am not able to figure out how to get there. I want help. And I'm like, now we're talking the right language. Those are the kind of people that I really connect with on a deeper level, and like, let us find a way. Because the average person, the average leader is not going to do this kind of work. And I just tell it, like, I'm pulling from Michael Jordan's quote, right? Like, I'm not here to be average. I'm here to be exceptional. I'm here to be the best. So how do I help people do that kind of work?
But there's a lot of things that cause people to relent. And that's what it fascinates me about this perspective, right? Is I like the Mamba mentality, the Jordan mentality, I don't want to be average, impossible is nothing, right? We can pick a bunch of slogans that align with people that even have kind of manifested that type of energy and commitment and consistency and all of those good things. And yet life is filled with all sorts of good reasons to relent. And so, like, at a human level, at a more like tangible level, what do you see people who are relentless doing that people who relent aren't doing? What's the real difference at its core?
Yeah, I think it comes down to it is doing the uncomfortable stuff. This is not necessarily going to be fun. This is going to be difficult. This is going to be like, I'm scared to take this step. There's a fear of it. There's a departure from the old way of doing things. And so I think courage is probably at the root of a lot of that I am going to go anyways, even though I'm terrified. Even though it's a departure from who I was in the past, who our team was in the past, I'm going to go anyways because I believe it's the right thing to do. So it gets like down to the core being and purpose and like why. One of the first questions I ask any of my leaders when I start to work with them is, why are we talking? Like, what do you want out of this? And if you could have anything, what's the big goal behind all of this? And can we connect on a deeper level of what that is? Because if we can gain clarity on what that big goal is, what the why is, what the want is, well, now we can create an alignment of commitment, the relentless pursuit of that connects to every fiber of our being, like to a DNA level of like, I have no choice. It has to happen. I will find a way. And that's a level of commitment that very few people employ.
Can you learn it?
100%.
How does somebody make the transition from relenter to relentless? How does that happen in your experience?
I think it's a bit of a peel back journey of like peeling back the layers of who we are. And, I think I want this. And like, I wanted to be a pro athlete when I was younger. And, as I really peeled it back, it was just the pursuit of something really exceptional that challenged me and pushed me in ways. And I had a steep hill to climb in order to make that happen. And, really the desire behind that, right? And so what was that? What did that mean for me? And so I think if we can peel back the layers and find out who are we authentically? Then what does that mean? Where do we want to go with that? What is not from a religious context, but from what's our purpose, right? What's our bigger purpose? Why are we, we got, how many weeks are we here, and what are we going to do in those weeks?
In your experience, do most people choose to be relentless about things that they naturally enjoy? Or is it more often things that they decide they want despite their personal desire to do the thing? You brought up the sports thing, right? And I think the vast majority of young boys, and I just can't speak for young girls. But my oldest wants to be a gymnast in the Olympics. So I think it's little girls too. But I think every little boy I know thought, man, I want to be an athlete. I thought I wanted to go play basketball. That was the sport I loved. But
sure.
What I'm curious of is how often do you experience people who choose to be relentless about the thing that they love versus people who choose to be relentless about the thing they've decided to get good at despite their lack of love for it? Is there any connection?
That's a great question. Let me ponder that. I think I've seen both. Well, I know I've seen both. I've seen people that are this is my calling. It scares the crap out of me, but I'm going anyways. And then there's others of this brings me so much joy that I just can't even contain it, and I have to share this with the world. So I think it's a very personal journey, that it really is about peeling that onion and what is it for you. And if you can figure that out, there is a source of energy within that will unlock the relentless piece.
Yeah, it seems like there's some alignment component necessary to truly desire to be relentless. I remember a quote, I wish I knew who to attribute it to, but I learned it in my early 20s, having ran a college pro painters franchise. But the quote was, the difference between a successful person and an unsuccessful person is just that the successful person has made a habit out of doing the thing the unsuccessful person doesn't want to do. And that really stuck with me, and consistently has proven itself to be true in the professional world especially, but also just in life in general. And so I kind of wonder if there's a parallel to the way to think about this relentless characteristic. Is it that you found the thing you love so much that you're willing to be relentless in order to pursue it? Or is it that you desire the outcome you foresee on the other side so much that you're willing to be relentless to it? Because I think the implication of being relentless is that you know what direction you're going to go. Be relentless. Okay, about what? What the hell am I supposed to be relentless about, right? And if that's not an obvious answer, then it's probably pretty difficult for you to be relentless about the thing, which goes back to your why are we talking? Or, what are you pursuing? Why does it matter? That deep-rooted question I want to come back to. So yeah, I guess if you had to throw a dart, I know you don't have statistics on it, but if you had to throw a dart, do you see more people who are relentless in the thing that they have alignment with organically? They just love it. They're passionate about it. Or you see more from people who just choose to be excellent at it because it's worth it to them for whatever reason?
Yeah, I think it's probably more A than B. It is for sure. If I think about the leaders I've worked with, no stats, no numbers behind this, but I'd say probably 90%, if I think off the top of my head of the people that I've worked with, there's a handful of select people that are so driven by something that they're I'm going to do this even though it's somewhat painful for me because I just have to. And I think a lot of people are the confluence of, EOS has this tool, Delegate and Elevate. Dan Sullivan talks about unique ability. There's a lot of people that talk about the confluence of what you're great at with what you love to do. There's magic in that space. And so I think it's figuring that out. I think it's a rare exception of the person that doesn't love it. And, I guess it goes, see, love is, I think I immediately went to like, well, if I don't love it, will I really dislike it? And that's not always the case either. There's a spectrum there. Well, what if I like it and I have potential to be great at it? I've got good natural talents that align with that. Then I think there's an opportunity to invest energy to move it from that like good and like, and delegate and elevate from EOS. There, with investment in time, energy, and focus, it can move from that quadrant into the great and love. That was my journey, and I see it with lots of leaders. I don't know whether I'm genetically encoded to be a teacher and a coach, but it was because, partially my dad was a phenomenal teacher and coach, and so was my mom. But it definitely was part of who I was. And I started to recognize that early in my leadership journey. I really love coaching, mentoring, teaching. It gave me energy doing that kind of work. But pragmatically, when I looked at it, and I'm like, well, I'm a volunteer hack, right? I'm not a pro. I don't really have any trained skills. I'm going purely on instincts and the lived experiences to this point. But to charge, I wouldn't feel right charging for it. But boy, there's magic in that experience for my life because I get significant energy from that space. I'll just tell the brief story. I've kind of ruined the ending, but lack of suspense is fun sometimes. So I would go into a meeting dreading going into this meeting. Well, I don't want to go. I'm tired. It's at the end of the day. I've spent all my gas. But I made a commitment. I'm going to go. I'm going to honor the commitment. So I went to the meeting, and 2 hours later, I'd walk out full of juice. Let's keep talking. Let's go for a beer together and keep working on that. And I was like, what happened in that 2 hours? And so the reason I want to share that story is that others can, if you're mindful of your energy levels, look inside the peaks and valleys of your energy, and in there is probably some magic. In the peaks, also the valleys, knowing what you don't want to do is also a value. And so I liked coaching and teaching. I wasn't great at it. I had some natural abilities. But I recognized, wow, if I develop myself in those arenas, I think there could be a future in there for me professionally. And so that realization shifted my path for my future. And then eventually I became a professional coach and teacher in the business world. And it's just been one of the most fulfilling, energy giving things that I've ever done in my life.
So in that example you just used, right, you were walking into a meeting, or, maybe this was a recurring theme of you were walking into meetings late in the day and repeatedly found yourself rejuvenated, having gone into something that you kind of were dreading, or at least didn't feel like you had the energy to bring. So it's almost like the crucible of that moment, lived several times, helped you reveal the underlying thing within which you actually did find value, which probably wasn't, hey, let's have more meetings, but it was, let's do more of this coaching, teaching thing that's fulfilling me during those meetings. Is that accurate? Did I capture that okay?
100%. Yeah. What happened in that meeting? What was I doing in that meeting? What was going on? What was my experience there that gave me juice? It was like tapping into a battery. It was right? What the heck was that? So what happened there? And that's why I say peel the onion, and it's for you to discover. Someone can't give it to you, right? Maybe they can share with you if you give people permission. Hey, share with me when you see my energy bump or drop.
Sure.
That can help us see our blind spots, because sometimes we don't see it. I've seen that live numerous times. Right? They weren't aware. Oh, I want to lead people. Really? Because every time you talk about managing or leading people, you complain about how they're the biggest pain in your ass. And I'm like, help me understand how this is really where you want to go in the future. Do you just want more money or the title, or what's going on? Right?
So I want to keep poking at this from different angles, right? Because what I'm thinking about this relentless thing is this so far, right? And I'm asking this, if you're in the audience and you're listening to this right now, the vast majority of people who are going to listen to this are going to look at themselves briefly and say, I'm not relentless. Like the average person, in fact, it's not even the average person. The first three quartiles of humans are not relentless. And I don't even say, I think it's fair to say that the top quartile, in whatever way we wanted to measure that, is relentless. It's like some fractional small percentage of the population is relentless, right? And we can see that manifest in a bunch of different ways. Think about competitive endeavors that take an enormous amount of effort and energy to ever perform or make money in. Sports are a great one. Ballet, music. There's a bunch of paths in life where only relentlessness gets people there. And it isn't even enough just to be relentless, right? To be a professional athlete, you can't just be relentless. You also have to be physically talented and gifted in ways that align with whatever sport you're going to do. So I'm saying this to 100%. Set the stage that almost nobody is relentless. And yet, that's where excellence is found. And excellence in sports, in humanity, in business, and invention, and all sorts of endeavors, like that relentlessness is what it really takes to rise above, and you just gave a little microcosm of it, right? You had to live through some crucible moments, some meetings you didn't want to do, some discomfort with some self-awareness to be able to identify a lead that might, put you in a position to better understand what you're willing to be relentless about. But if you're listening to this and you're like, what the hell are these guys talking about? Be relentless. Like, you probably don't know anybody that's relentless. The average bear doesn't. But it's really interesting to recognize that you can develop it. And what sounds like the first step you're revealing here, Chris, is you kind of got to try some different shit out and look in the mirror a little bit. Like, maybe you're not doing the things that you would be relentless about, right? There's this song, and it's not a great song by any stretch of the imagination, but there's this song I like called Russell Westbrook on a Farm. And it paints this picture of Russell Westbrook growing up and having never come across a basketball game or the game of basketball. He's walking along in a field or he's walking along in some area one day he's never been in before, and he stumbles across some people playing basketball, and it just lights him up in a way that he's never experienced before. This is obviously not a true story. But the point is, like, what if you just haven't been exposed to the thing that you would be relentless about? And is there the potential that everybody has something in their life that they would choose to be relentless about if they simply had the exposure to it and the wherewithal to live through the crucible of exposure and be self-reflective during it? Like, would that be the recipe? I know we're being extremely hypothetical here, Chris, but you've got 600 plus sessions you've done full day all day for EOS. You've ran multiple businesses. Like, is that the foundations of the recipe for a person to identify what direction they might point their relentlessness vector in?
I think it's a great place to start. And I think you talk about, like, very few people are relentless. And I also think that, I think there's a number of people that are relentless. And I think a lot of people in our lives are relentless in a way. And I also think that almost nobody that you'll ever meet, I don't think anyone can be relentless at everything they do and touch. They can try, but like Michael Jordan, clearly an amazing basketball player. Westbrook, again, we're both basketball fans. But I'll guarantee you, they might compete when they play mini golf because they're competitive individuals, but they're not going to be relentless about it because they're like, that was a fun thing to do on a Friday night. And now I'm done, and I don't care if I do it again for another 10 years. So they're not going to be relentless about mini golf, but they were relentless about basketball to become the talents that they became. And yes, they had natural ability. I'm 5'10", on a good day, 5'9.5", on a bad. And as much as I wanted to be a center in basketball, unless I was playing in the Filipino leagues, I don't think that was ever going to happen, So, let's get real here. Just because we want and love something doesn't mean it makes sense. The genetic encoding has to be the other side of it. And, do we even know what that is without the exploration, to your point?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I kind of associate relentlessness with like pursuit of something to the exclusion of all else, which like means you're obviously not going to be good at a bunch of things, right? Like, and again, we see this manifest in negative ways quite frequently, right? Think of the number of successful professionals with broken marriages or homes or relationships, right? And like it's literally to the exclusion of all else at times. That's obviously not the only factor, but there's this cost of relentlessness as well, which is like your opportunity cost to be even mediocre at a bunch of other things probably goes down dramatically. And you probably do have some natural, let's just consider it like an aperture. The amount of lens that's available for you to cast your relentless gaze upon is probably fairly narrow, to your point of being 5'9" in the basketball world requiring you to be 6'4" or taller to even have a chance. Like, so there's like almost some self-awareness muscle required at first to identify, am I even steering my boat into waters where I would have the potential to identify a passion that I might choose to be relentless about, so I could go be one of the best at it, or, as good as I desire to be in that direction. It's interesting.
Yeah. There's a phenomenal book, really specific around sports, but called The Tao of Sport. And it's a wonderful book to read if you're a parent of kids that are interested in becoming high performance athletes or are on the path and you want to support them in the best way possible. But it was written by actually a Calgarian here in town who is an Olympic gold medalist. And, so he reached the pinnacle of his sport. And he said, like, to have a relentless focus with your children before their physical maturity is actually asinine. That, like, if you don't know their physical talents, like, I'm sorry, but 8 and 9 and 10 years old, like, I don't know whether you're going to have a growth spurt and could be a basketball player, or, what is the genetic encoding of physical maturity look like? And once that started to gain clarity as you mature as an athlete, well, now you can pick a lane and sure, maybe more focus then. But he was a really strong proponent for multi-sport athletes achieving at a high level, to fully round themselves out as an athlete. And I'm a big fan of this concept of like explore, have fun in the sport, love of sport, just period. And if you pick your sight lines too soon, repetitive strain injuries, and parents get more obsessed than the kids, and the kids are like, I don't like it because you are pushing me too hard, etc. Phenomenal read. Duff Gibson is the guy's name.
What was the name of it?
Excellent read.
What's the name of the book?
The Tao of Sport, T-A-O. The Tao of Sport.
There's a book, it sounds like, I think this concept of relentless is maybe parallel to one of the concepts that picked up in the early 2000s after Malcolm Gladwell wrote Outliers. If you're familiar with that Outliers framework, he lays out, right, the 10,000 hour rule, and he uses examples of so many people who had early access to technology or opportunity so that they were, so many thousands of hours ahead of everybody else that they just had a massive competitive advantage. And it boils it down to, if you get 10,000 hours of experience, that's where you begin to approach mastery. Well, a lot of people, parents especially, took that as a directive to go and get 10,000 hours of experience as quickly as possible, right? And so you get the tiger mom making their child play violin for 4 hours a day when they're 7 or 10 or whatever. And, before you know it, no shit, the kid doesn't like violin very much, let alone music or their mom.
Yeah.
And so there was this other book that was written. It was written in the early 2010s. It was called Range, R-A-N-G-E. And I can't recall the author's name right now, but I read Range and found it fit better to me than Outliers did. And it sounds a lot like the Tao of Sport, which is effectively, you don't know what you like until you give it a shot in a bunch of different directions. And to your other point, you don't know what you're going to be naturally gifted at until you try a bunch of things, right? If Russell Westbrook just never happened to pick up a basketball and played football instead, he'd probably be a killer athlete, but, did he miss his real calling there? If Michael Phelps never jumped in the pool, how would he have ever known? And the idea of Range was simply, you get a lot further by sampling a large number of things and then identifying the one that's most aligned for you, because your alignment and your passion is usually what carries people into excellence. And the seminal study of this thing was really oriented around athletes because it's the easiest way to quantify a lot of this. And it's obviously such an extremely difficult thing. And so they looked at the EPL, the European Premier League soccer players. And I'm going to misquote the number here, so nobody bite my head off in comments or something. But they looked at the EPL and asked this question of, at what age did you commit to soccer? They went to every EPL player and asked that question. You know, there's obvious standout players, Ronaldo and Messi, and these characters you hear the myths about who, you know, have a long-term contract when they're 7 years old. Like, those people are real, but at the same time, they found that the average EPL player didn't really commit to soccer until they were late into their teens. Prior to that, they were just a really good athlete. They just loved sports.
Multiple
and they
skill
learned
development and right? Yeah, so good.
Cross-training in a lot of different ways, and they whittled down what they didn't like and naturally found their sweet spot and then became relentless about it. So it seems like you really can't fake relentlessness, and at the same time, you have to have some courage and conviction to pursue relentlessness too, right? That's got to be a difficult dynamic. I'm sure in your business work, I'm going to ask you to maybe think of a specific example if you can, and maybe you can't, and that's okay too. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but like, can you think of a time or a story of a person you worked with where like that relentless calling was something they were putting in the energy to find, but just never cracked the code? Like, can you think of a failure story of a person pursuing relentlessness? They had the courage and conviction, but the plane never landed? Does that happen?
Yeah, 100%. I can share a personal example. So, like, my sporting goods business, I owned it for 23 years. 19 of it, I was active day to day. And, like, I was relentless in nature, trying to be the best at what I did. And honestly, I was like, just felt like I was a jack of all trades and master of none. And so I was competitive. So I was always trying to win, right? Like, I was showing up every day. How do we make this better? How do we do this? How do we do that? And, you know, can I figure this out? And, you know, I just never felt like I became excellent at anything there, quite frankly. And, you know, and so I had this large crisis moment in 2012 where we lost 70% of our business overnight and had to really like, wow, like, what do I do now? It was frightening and scary and overwhelming and all sorts of things of like, as I navigated those first steps of like, what do I do? Right? How do I lead in this time? And I had some great mentors and peers around me at the time. Man, they were phenomenally valuable to me in that time of trouble and darkness. And so there was about 2 weeks where I navigated that dark period of like, head was firmly up my butt. And like, what do I do? And so I was, you know, I really looked at it like, well, what am I really good at here? And so I started stripping away some of the stories that I had in my head. And one of the stories I'd grown up with was, I can be good at anything I put my mind to. So therefore, I tried to be good at everything I saw in front of me. And it was a really great formula for being average at a lot of things. And so the crisis moment, that really was the big story behind my book of what happened in that moment and that time. But the evolution, I decided to regrow it, ripped the Band-Aid off, got through the pain, decided to regrow the business. And in doing so, I had so much clarity that I am not going to do all the things anymore. And I'm like, going to start to say no to stuff. And I started like a lot, where I used to say yes to everything. And so I started saying no to a lot of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to find brands, get deals done, and launch the first phase, get it into the Canadian market, and then get out of the operations. And so there were like these tentacles pulling me back into the operations, the day-to-day on a regular basis. And, oh, you can do this. Why? You did this in the past. Why don't you do that again? And I was like, no, I can't. I can't, because if we're going to grow, like, I can't get distracted. We might not survive. And I got to get out of solving the $5,000 problems. I need to start solving $500,000 problems, $1 million problems. And I'm like, I can't get caught in the $5,000 problems anymore. And it's not that I'm too important. It's like, A, we might not survive and believe, but also B, I believe my gifts are in solving the bigger problems. And so, but it started out with me being a complete failure at trying to do all the things well. And relentless pursuit of everything was a terrible recipe.
So once again, there's some inherent lesson of exclusion required here. Like, in order for you to make that leap, it required you to say no to a bunch of things, despite a lot of good reasons to have potentially done them, right? Like, there's always a million good reasons for a business owner to do everything. They usually have dollars attached to them. But you had to exclude that in order to get good at it.
Yeah. I actually don't. I think the dollars are a good excuse and they sometimes drive it. But I think the two emotions I see most at play with people unwilling to let go of things, fear. And we're going to lose money is one of the fears, or it's not going to go as well as I could do it, or, but ego, pride also can often, like, A, they're not going to do it as well as me, or B, if I delegate this so well and let go of it so well, who am I? What is my identity? And my identity is wrapped up in that old version of me operationally doing everything. Who am I going to be? Am I going to be irrelevant?
Yeah, and that's not exactly a vocalized fear that often, is it? Like we as coaches often have to pull that out of people. No. That's not one of the ones we're cognizant of, even of our own selves most of the time.
Yeah.
But the recipe...
And then there's guilt and shame.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the recipe, go ahead. Oh, I'm just saying, it's so unique to each individual. Some people feel guilt and shame, like, I don't deserve to be like doing this thing that's not grinding anymore while you're all grinding, so I feel guilty about not being operational.
Sure.
And others have no guilt and they're like, I'm just scared it's not going to go well, or like, anyways, it's such a personal journey to letting go.
So it took a crucible again for you to get there, right? And I do want to come back at some point to your experience of that losing 70% of your business overnight. I think there's a lot of interesting things to talk about there, but like, we go back to your mechanism for identifying where you needed to be relentless was stress, strain, scarcity. I don't know anybody who has a different story than that. I don't think I know anybody who just, it sure was easy to find the thing I'm relentless about. Like, I don't know a single person I've ever talked to who genuinely is excellent at something. Doesn't mean they're the best in the world, but is excellent at something where it wasn't forged from scarcity, loss, risk, something along like it. That seems like it's an inherent piece. You almost have to go looking for it. And if you're not finding it, there's a pretty low chance you're developing the skills or experiences required to get to that degree of excellence.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think intentionality, sometimes people might bump into something haphazardly, but I think intentionality plays a big role for most, I would say. I've definitely bumped across a couple lucky things in my life where a good coach or mentor said, "Hey, dum-dum, like, this might be good for you. Like, you're pretty good at this." Like, that was what led me into the business world, was one of those moments. But yeah, I think intentionality is going to provide a higher likelihood of success if we're really trying to do that. And that's why so few people will truly figure that stuff out. And that's okay, right? Like, if the whole world had all this figured out, then it would be really boring. I don't know. The world needs all kinds, right? And so not everyone's going to relate to my message, and the pleaser in me had to let go of that as well. Like, not everyone's going to relate to Relentless AF as a title. That doesn't do it for me. I'm like, that's okay. I just didn't write the book for you. And they're like,
that takes a lot of wherewithal to get to too, right? That has to be an ego blow as well. It's a recognition
because
your message isn't for everybody.
Yeah. And it's kind of the recognition that I wasn't great at everything, and nor should I even try. And now I'm to the point where I celebrate the stuff I suck at. I'm like, I'm terrible at this. Can I hire you, please? Because I have no qualms that I'm not good at this. Please help me. I need you. I love you. If you can solve this for me. And it's the same thing of writing a book. I'm not trying to make everybody happy, but the ones that I make happy say, "Chris, I've read your book 3 or 4 times. It changed my life. Totally helped me." And I'm like, great. That's who I wrote it for.
Have you read the book 10X is Easier Than 2X?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Phenomenal read. I've been a coach, strategic coach, spent 4 years in coach. I love it. Stuff's so good.
Yeah, that who, not what.
And Ben Hardy is, Ben Hardy is amazing too. Like, yeah, between the two of them, great combination. But that principle is phenomenal, right?
The happiest business owners
the same way if we're going to 10X.
Yeah. And the happiest business owners that I know, happen to also be the most successful business owners that I know, are very comfortable telling you what they shouldn't do. And the most unhappy business owners that I know, and genuinely people that I know, have a scarcity mindset around, I can do everything well, and why can't everybody else? And so there's this paradigm shift somewhere in there of like, acknowledging your own parameters is liberating. It liberates some part of your psyche and energy and effort to pursue the things you could pursue that would help you 10X your life in whatever way that really means, right? Quantifiably in the business, or time off, or relationship quality, something along those lines. But like, you have to be willing to let go before you can get more. There's this weird paradox in there. Maybe I'm not articulating it well, but it sounds like you found the same thing.
Yeah, I see the same thing. And the people, those kind of leaders that you're saying that are refusing to let go of that stuff, are also the people that are on the phone on their vacations. They're like, I just have to take this call.
Yeah, right.
They struggle as a general rule, not everybody, but they struggle to let go of the day-to-day as well. And therefore there's an anchor that's holding them back to their business, that they're never fully away or off. And if I pull this back to the psychology, my oldest son is neurodiverse. It's been such a gift learning to teach and work and parent him, because he's not wired like the average norm, and he has an anxiety disorder. And one of the things is I learned about this anxiety piece is, like, I use this analogy, like, you can't solve a complex math problem while you're being chased by a bear. And these people that are in high states of anxiety on a regular basis, like, their brain is fucked, quite frankly, excuse the language, unless you can remove the anxiety, you can't learn anything. And so if we pull this to the same thing of, like, always being busy, always having something to do, is in a way pulling us into a state of anxiety.
Oh, man.
So neurologically, we are stressed. So cortisol is rolling all the time. And it's a bit of a drug, right? Like, it can give us a high of doing that. But are we ever going to do our best work if we're always on the stress high? Because we are not going to solve the complex problem with creative solutions when we're being chased by the bear of the day-to-day.
Wow. That's a really profound lesson. I mean, you're the way in which you learned that, the support of your neurodivergent son and the recognition that anxiety was getting in the way of his ability to flourish is, one, probably more common than we realize. And I love hearing you tell that story, because as I meet more and more families in that type of dynamic, that's continually the recipe, is find the opportunity to reduce the anxiety, and it would be unfair to say the rest solves itself, but it sure seems to get a lot easier. And then...
until you solve that in the educational environment, he was learning nothing.
Yeah. Well, I have a neurodivergent younger brother as well, and he's a teenager now, and that's been a huge change in his life in the last 2 years, is finding an academic setting where that was respected and acknowledged and given the resources necessary to allow him to flourish. And the difference is just startling. And so I think that's a common recipe, though, to your point, not common enough. But the lesson outside of that psychological safety element of learning is something we're experiencing a lot. I run a separate business, Chris, called Speechcraft, and we focus on AI role play for soft skill development. And one of the benefits of putting people in a position where they can practice the difficult aspects of their job, in our world, it's the communication side, in a psychologically safe environment, is that it takes the risk out of learning. Failure is a necessary component to learning. And yet, if failure has a consequence every time you live through it, you do everything you can to avoid learning moments. So that's the recipe, right? Like, failure has a cost. I avoid costs. Therefore, I don't fail very often. Therefore, I don't learn very often. And that cycle right there seems to shut down. I'm sure there's wizards at psychology who could explain all of this to us in a very, like, literal, this is how the brain works way. But for those of us that don't speak that language, this recipe seems to be harming a lot of people's ability to learn in general. And so your point of you're not learning much if you're piling stuff on yourself, you're creating this artificial anxiety by having too many things on your plate, too many different applications of yourself that are outside of your true zone of impact. No wonder you're not learning or getting better at any of them. I mean, 10x is easier than 2x would tell us that. Anybody who's a teacher of anyone who's neurodivergent would tell us that. Psychology would probably tell us that. And yet it's incredibly difficult for most people to do that. Like, makes me think of like Eli and Kyle over at Reset OS and what they're doing of trying to get people to unplug for a few days in order to really check in with themselves and find purpose. And all. You can't do that unless you actually take the time to do so.
I mean, it's layman terms. It's if we're in the lizard brain, that's the cortisol induced. That's the part of the brain we live in when we're in a state of stress. And it was, our brain is set up that way so that we survived when a bear was chasing us. We needed to escape or we died. And so when I don't know whether we've found ways to induce that so that we feel alive in some form, but staying there is unhealthy. And, whether, places like what Eli and those guys are doing, strategic coach. One of the biggest values for me going to Santa Monica was I shut things down on the plane. I thank for the entire plane ride there. I spend the afternoon exercising, prepping, mentally disconnecting, dinner with cool people that night, and then a day of learning. Well, and usually the morning before a workout, clarity break, then a day of learning, and then again, more dinner with cool people. Like, that type of intentional spend of my time. And then the next day, I stayed the entire next day. And the first part of the day was learning. What did I learn from yesterday? How am I going to digest that? And I once I get through the material and what I'm going to pull from it, then I get the reward of going to play on the beach. And so that was my intentional protocol in that program, to create a disconnect time. They created epiphanies for me that saved me, quite frankly, years of my life. And it didn't happen by being connected 24/7 and being on the phone to my team and what problem can I solve now? You know, it was full on changing the way just creating space.
Not to make too big of a leap off of that, but it made me think of like, I have two little girls, right? And so they're 6 and 9, and I look at the landscape of technology in front of them. And Jonathan Haidt has done some great work on this recently with the anxious generation, and a bunch of other people have explored this dynamic of the challenge facing teens. And again, mine aren't teens yet, but they're coming up on it faster than I'd like.
Sure.
That reality of you need more boredom in your life. You need more unplugged time, unscheduled, disconnected, right? We can call it a bunch of different things, but like, we know this is true as adults. And oddly enough, we're talking about needing to unplug in the pursuit of relentlessness, which feels paradoxical. And, I know that to be true for my daughters as well, right? If they're that overscheduled kid who's committed to club soccer at 8 years old, in addition to all these other programs, like, it's probably not very good for them. And it's probably not really going to serve them very much. But we're kind of addicted to filling up our calendars and our times and our attention span. Like, how do you help? What do you recommend to people? And this might be business owners, this might be individuals. I don't know. It's a broad question intentionally, but like, what do you recommend? How do people unplug more so that they actually can connect with some of this stuff?
Yeah, there's a handful of things that we teach in the EOS tool set that are related to that. And then I share my own personal experiences. Like, this is what I do to disconnect, and this is what it's done for me. And a lot of people are like, oh, most people don't do that. And I pull the average quote out again. You're right. Most people don't. And that's why they stay average. Like, if you want to be exceptional, almost every exceptional leader I've ever met has some type of a clarity protocol, where they spend significant amounts of time thinking about the bigger problems, and it's not connected to email and technology. Like, maybe technology can juice the efforts if used in the right way, but it's focused efforts, not distraction inducing technology. You know what I mean? So yeah, I get people to put it on their scorecard. Did you take a clarity break this week? And then we talk about ways to do clarity breaks. And it is one of the things that my leaders struggle the most with doing, because to your point, there's something that we've been fed in the development over the last, our generation and the current generation, that being busy is good or whatever it is. I'm not smart enough to know the root of all of it. But what I do know, and I see regularly, is that this is a really hard obstacle for many people to overcome. They struggle to disconnect for an hour to a week and just think. They find it really, really
like
hard.
I
was scared of it.
Yeah. It seems like busyness could be the enemy of relentlessness. Is that accurate?
Well, I think relentlessness is a perspective, right? And so I think busyness is the enemy of excellence. If you want to be exceptional, I think busyness is going to kill you. I think you can be relentless as heck. You can just be going all the time and call it whatever you want. That's your perspective.
Sure. How should people do clarity? Talk more about your recommendation for how people should pursue clarity exercises or clarity time.
Well, this is a little bit of a peel the onion type discussion as well. And this is one of the examples I share. Like, I love physical pursuits. You know, whether it's training in the gym intensely, whether it's going for a ride or a hike, water skiing, downhill skiing, cross country, you name it. If someone says we're doing something outside, I'm like, I'm in. What are we doing? Like, let's go. But going for a 2-hour bike ride is not clarity break for me. I don't think about my big problems on a bike. I'm in the moment. I love it. I need it. It's essential for me to be my best as a leader. But it is not clarity break time for me, and I don't fool myself that it is. Whereas I know other leaders that take their problems on their runs, and they go and they run for 2 hours and they solve their problems on their run. And I'm like, that's wonderful for you, but that's not me. And so it's a little bit of peel the onion to get to authentically know yourself, explore to your point and try. But are you getting the clarity you need? And, you know, your confidence will thank you, right? So you got to figure it out. And so is that sitting in a car with nobody around? Is this an airplane where you shut down and don't talk to your neighbor? Is this going to a backcountry mountain cabin? Is it sitting in a coffee shop with people bustling around? I struggle with that one a bit because I get too easily distracted. I don't know, maybe a minor form of ADHD. But if I have too many people around, I can get more easily waylaid. But yeah, so anyway, figure it out, your formula. You know, we say in EOS, like, if you're not sure, grab a blank sheet of paper and go to a coffee shop for a couple hours and see what comes out. There's books written on it, the Clarity Guide. Chris White wrote it. The Road Less Stupid is a great clarity break book.
What a great title.
And he just talks about all the stupid... Yeah, he talks about the stupid tax, right? All the mistakes he made that cost him money and time, etc. And so he just poses question after question for leaders in that book and then finishes it off by like, now go think about it. You'll thank me later. So, yeah, it's also a journey that there isn't a prescription that works for everybody. You really have to do the work. Are you intentionally doing things? Sitting there thinking about the problems. What I can share with you that's been effective for me, intentionality. I know your priorities by looking at your calendar. So is it in your calendar? Secondly, I've been successful bringing a specific problem to the clarity break. What do I want to think about and solve or gain some clarity on that I'm muddy on right now? Occasionally I'll take a clarity break with somebody else. Hey, Erik's a great thought partner for this. I'm going to engage him in this discussion, and we're going to think through it together. So there's a couple of things that, and then always finishing with, what are the next steps? What am I going to do? You know, let's take action on something coming out of this clarity break. If it isn't obvious, then commit to something. Often I
certainly agree with that perspective that if it's not in your calendar, it's not real. And it's obviously not that important to you. I think that's a foundational element. So that's probably a good step one. Like if you're listening and you're like, how would I possibly do that? Well, the answer would be like, fast forward into your calendar to the week where you have availability and block out time. And it probably isn't 1 hour. I don't know that it takes 4, but it's probably not 1, because you just can't really do much in a 1 hour block. You really have to sink into it. And so I learned this year, Chris, I read 10X is easier than 2X late last year. It was in November. And the schedule, like several things hit me really hard, but the scheduling one probably hit me the most tactically. And so I stopped booking everything in 1 hour blocks, especially anything creative. And there's parts of my job that I do that are incredibly creative, and they require a lot of cerebral load. And stupidly, I was blocking them out 1 hour at a time in between sales calls or coaching calls or whatever. And I realized, like, that's just not functioning. I need a while to sink into it, right? And so now Tuesday, we're shooting this on a Tuesday because Tuesday is my creative day. It's just all I do is this type of long form, interesting thinking stuff where I'm really not rigid or regimented. I don't have a series of questions I'm over here executing with you. I'm participating in an interesting creative conversation, and then I'll go write content or shoot YouTube or solo podcast episodes or something along those lines, or have some thinking time. But I had to expand that time block as the first tactical thing. So that's probably step 1. I love your idea of step 2, like recruit an ally. Come up with a good thinking partner that you just, can play the bad ideas to good ideas game with you and can let you ideate freely without consequence or without overcommitment to a particular task. And let's be clear, that's a very particular type of person. You know who it's not, probably. You may not know who it is, but you know who it's not, where you get, pigeonholed into a particular conversational path. But that clarity time is, to your point, you don't know many excellent leaders that don't embrace that. And I want to go back, though, because you made it clear, like biking or outdoor activity isn't clarity time for you. It's probably part of the recipe required to bring your full self to bear, but it in and of itself is not clarity. Maybe the right starting point for someone is 2 hours in a coffee shop with an empty notepad and no cell phone. That might be another way for them to go about it. But figuring out your own recipe for how do you get clarity is a pretty critical way to do it. Mine, for what it's worth, involves a big whiteboard and nothing on the calendar and an absence of technology. Like, I don't know, doesn't really matter where yet, though I probably could dial that in better. It more just matters that I have not scheduled myself for anything else. I have a large piece of paper to capture things on, and I kind of force myself to not do anything else in that time window. That's my current recipe, and I'm just starting to get good at it. Honestly, coming out of Eli and Kyle's reset experience is what drove it for me. But that seems like a pretty necessary step in that pursuit of Relentless.
I think so. I think let me add something too, as you shared your practice. The first, it all starts with mindset, of course. And so clarity breaks are a practice. Like, I tried meditation once. It was terrible. I'm like, what's the point of doing that? That's what I thought initially. Like, that was terrible. It was the longest 3 minutes of my life. Until I started to shift my perspective of, like, can I get more mindful and be my authentic self? And the perspective of meditation is a practice. There's no such thing as perfection. Even gurus get distracted during meditation. Well, so let it go if you're getting distracted. And I did that, and it helped me enormously. Clarity break is no different. Like, the problem with clarity breaks is not doing one. So doing one is better than 95% of the population, if not higher. So if you're doing one, great. Is it suck? Oh, well, some are going to be better than others. So give yourself permission to not be perfect, make a mess, and just doing it is better than not. And then the perspective of practice is, well, hey, can we do it? And then, just like sports, well, can we reflect on what worked, didn't work? Well, is there ideas I might have to make the next one better? And just like we would in practice in a sport, the same thing. All the pro athletes review game film, debrief after a race or a competition, what worked, what didn't work, how are we going to change things for the next one? And so why would this be any different for us if we're going to build an exceptional clarity practice?
So that really speaks to the need for feedback loops. I guess first I want to validate, yes, any effort in this direction is better than none and would be a meaningful step to elevate you above, to your point, the vast majority or average. And the way to get better at that is through a feedback loop, to build in some reflection process or ability to just occasionally look back and go, is that working well? Like, what could I do differently? But not prejudging it, but just looking back in the rearview mirror and saying, how do I get better at this next time? That seems to be a pretty necessary step there. I want to try and go back a little ways, right?
Absolutely.
We're pretty far down this road of pursuit of relentlessness and some of the factors that play into it. And, one of the underlying elements is the selection of what to be relentless about. And that goes back to one of those difficult questions you've shared with me in the past of helping somebody really identify, like, what do you really want?
Yeah.
What do you want? What do you want to happen here? Not even necessarily the action or the outcome, but like big picture, what direction are you going? What's your true North Star? And I think it would be fair to say most people are really hamstrung by this. Most people really struggle with clarity in this area. Why is it so hard for us, Chris, to identify what we really want?
I don't know. But it is one of the questions. I mean, EOS is all about helping leaders get what they want, and I never really spent a lot of time thinking about it. But I'll tell you, that question I am asking leaders more often and more intensely of late. And I don't just mean entrepreneurs struggle with this. Every leader in the room struggles with the answer to that question. And, I've seen all walks. And if we don't have clarity on what we want, well, how do we or anyone, like, people want to help us get there in general. So how can we possibly get there if we have no clue where we're going? It's a wonderful question. What do we want?
Yeah, if you don't know where you're going, any path will get you there. And that's, frankly, the path that leads to busyness. That's the root cause of busyness and having too many things is a lack of clarity on where you're going so that you can exclude the things that don't serve you very well, right? And 10X is easier than 2X does a good job of framing a way to think about that. And there's a myriad of other resources that people can use to do it. But like at its core, it's really difficult to know what we want. I think one of the reasons we don't know what we want is because we have this competing war of self of like, it's very difficult to connect with yourself as an individual and decide what you want as Chris, as a husband, as a father, as a business owner, as a friend, as a mentor, as a person of faith or not, right? We have all these versions of ourself, this overlapping Venn diagram of what we think of ourselves, this self-perception as a business owner or athlete or fitness expert, whatever the heck you are, whatever you identify with, it seems like a lot of those things war with each other. And there seems to be this lack of connective tissue to help us seamlessly integrate all of that into a core being within which we can identify, like, what do you really want out of life? But it's like arguably the most important, like one of the most important questions. And how do you coach people through that? Like, when you're working with a business owner and you're helping, they're facing a dilemma, because the way we bump into this as coaches is quite often when a leader we're working with is not bumping into dilemmas, that sometimes is a red flag, but more often than not, they're bumping into a dilemma, and at its crux is not what to do, but what do you really want that would help you determine what to do? Like, that's where it tends to manifest the most, is this lack of clarity manifests in me not knowing how to handle a particular situation or opportunity or problem, because I'm not clear about the end goal and both sides of it look attractive to me. How do you help the average person think through, what do they really want?
Yeah. Yeah, that's where it gets a little deeper sometimes. And sometimes it's a simple to-do of like, go take a clarity break just on this concept. And can you understand, sometimes it's understanding what do you not want? What's sometimes helping us understand the negative helps us understand where we do want to go. I say, try it on like a shirt. Try it on for a while. Do you want this? Come back to it. Come back to it the next day, the next week, the next month. Do I still want this? And if no, that's okay. What is it next then? And it's just kind of holding it loosely and, to peel the onion to the authentic self of like, what is this really all about for me? For those around me. And I also think that coming to grips with the fact that someone shared with me that when we find the paradox is often when we've found the truth of the matter. So, like, I think we tend to love the binary world over, it's a 1 or a 0. But the reality, blame, right, is binary. Contribution is usually the reality. And there's many contributing factors that pose the circumstances that we're in. And so that's the joy of life, is doing this work that I love so much and helping people unwrap this. And hey, it's okay if you don't know. And we all want to help you get there. The first step is to gain the clarity. Can you do that? And try it. And then think about it and think about it from all the different angles and, try it on like that shirt.
I think something you just said is pretty profound there, but it might be easily glossed over. I think one of the reasons it's hard to answer, what do you want, is because we feel quite a bit of pressure to be able to answer it. And you just said it's okay not to know. And to be comfortable with recognizing that you don't yet know as a meaningful first step in the pursuit of knowing is probably a necessary component here. How much of this, go back, let's go back to the crisis, right? The origin story of Relentless AF and, your story about turning really difficult situation, disaster into success, that crucible time with your business. Like, how much of that helped shape your clarity? Was that a moment where that galvanized it, or was that the beginning of the journey? Like, how did that fit into your pursuit of, what you want?
Oh, it was one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. It was yes to all of what you just said. I felt like a jack of all trades and master at none, so it started to truly help me let go and gain focus. And, I couldn't do what I do now as well without that really hard experience, the crucible, right? It's such an essential element to becoming a leader, right? The crucible. So that was one of the crucibles I faced. And as I navigated through that, I really started to enjoy it and really started to love it. My mother-in-law, when she saw me after she'd heard about that, she's like, "Chris, I'm so sorry." And by this, I'd navigated the 2 weeks of darkness, and I was looking in the windshield, not the rearview mirror anymore. I was just looking forward, and I'm like, "What, are you kidding me? I'm like having the time of my life rebuilding this." And she looked at me like, "You need to go see a therapist. Like, there's something wrong with you."
You're in
and I'm
denial.
like, "I think this is fun." Yeah, like, you've lost touch with reality, whatever it was. And I'm like, I am having a shit ton of fun remaking the rules for my business, for my life, for my team. I'm not held by this anchor anymore. It freed me. And coming out the other side, I mean, we grew 7 times in revenue over the next 2.5 years. And then I went from being full-time, the linchpin in that business, to only 3 hours a month. Like, which is what I wanted.
Wow.
Right. And so I'm like, how do I let go of everything to the point where someone else is running this without me? And I'm irrelevant to the day-to-day. And I was thrilled about that journey because I was clear on what I wanted. But I rebuilt it, and I was so like, the strength that gave me internally, it developed a fortitude in me, the crucible, right? They were no longer wounds, they were battle scars coming out of that. And I'm so grateful for every one of those scars attached to that situation, because it helped me understand that throw stuff at me. Not only am I going to be okay, am I going to endure it? I actually think I can flourish through it in ways that are going to shock myself and those around me. And so like kind of that concept of embracing crisis, COVID happened, and I'm like, don't worry, everybody. We're going to be okay. Yes, this sucks. Like, people are legit dying and risk of getting sick. But most people are running and hiding and, battening down the hatches right now. Do you want to be the leader that, like, leads through this? You'll be the exception, and can we create enormous impact and opportunity for people in a positive way through what most people are seeing as a really dark period? Can this be incredible? And so I actually lost 60% overnight initially in COVID, and I was energized by the whole thing. I'm like, everything's going to be okay. Like, not only is it going to be okay, I think it's going to be amazing. Follow me. And so I just started giving away some time and helping people through it. And they're like, I don't know. I just started working with Chris because he was excited about what was going on and no one else was. And so, like, yeah, it unlocked something in me for sure, that experience, that I'll forever be grateful for.
And it's got to be such a conundrum because, it's not like you wanted to go through that experience, right? Like prior to going through it, if we can humanize that moment, there was no part of you that was like, gee, it'd be great. It'd be pretty cool if, like, I went through the most tumultuous time of my life tomorrow. Like, that'd be pretty badass. I can't wait for that. Like, nobody says that. And yet in hindsight, you're able to look back at it and go, I needed that. That was the catalyst for me to grow. So, like, how does somebody square with that reality, Chris, that, like, the looming doom that's in front of them or that they're feeling or seeing around the corner, or hell, maybe even experiencing right now? How does somebody take that moment and put it into the proper context to flip their paradigm, to have that perspective that this might be the opportunity that defines me and I can go define it if I just change my mindset and approach it this way? Like, how the heck does a person go through that in the moment?
Yeah, it is not easy. First off, I think, second of all, first off, I think we can prepare for it to a degree. Can we mentally build resilience, and are we willing to do uncomfortable things? I do a silly thing, like I have a cold tub in my backyard. I've sat it at like 44 degrees. It's really uncomfortable. I never want to get in the thing, but I do it anyways. First thing in the morning, it can be, Fahrenheit, most of your lists. It can be 10 degrees Fahrenheit outside, like way, way below freezing. I will walk outside and get in that dang cold tub every morning just to do something uncomfortable to start my day. And then the other things just seem a little bit less hard, of like, oh, it's just another thing. Let's just go do it. And so resilience, I think, can be developed, a mental fortitude. Secondly, when you're in it and your head is up your butt, that is a normal response, right? We're being chased by the bear. I think my favorite analogy, like, it's okay to sit in the muck, first off. Just absorb it, feel it, don't run from it, be in it. Secondly, the Trevor Moawad's work with getting to neutral, a phenomenal concept of just like, when we're in the muck, we're in reverse, we're in a tailspin. It's part of the human experience. All of us go through them regularly. And to go to positive thinking, what's amazing about this? Why is this happening for me, not to me? Like, all fantastic concepts. But his is like, can we get to neutral first before going into drive, right? Like, drive is positive, reverse is negative. Can we get to neutral first? So is that literally just taking a breath? Is that literally, can I just walk to my car? Is it, can I just get to my workout? Can I just get through this meeting? And can we employ neutral thinking initially when we're really tail spinning? Secondly, I'm like, I invite you to consider looking for the gift in this. Not only can you endure it, but what in this is happening that's maybe the best thing that's ever happened to you? And you might not be there yet, but start to noodle this question as you go through the muck. And then as you shift gears into neutral, can you start to see opportunities that this opens doors that were closed previously? Because the crisis will unlock a part of your brain that isn't accessed normally. Right? I couldn't think about my problem until we lost 70% of our business in the same way. I'd thought about it. I had a written game plan B. Wonderful. I'd thought through some of it, but I couldn't see all of it until I was really in it. And then when I was in it, it unlocked a part of my brain that just wasn't accessible in a calm state. So then it's like, okay, well, what's incredible? Anyway, that's one of the incredible things that happens in a state of crisis. It does open up things in ourselves that were not accessible otherwise.
Man, I can only imagine, one, the power of that question and perspective. But Chris, I can't imagine the sheer hostility in some people's responses to you inviting them to look at it that way. Like, that's such a vulnerable moment in time. I've got to imagine it takes a lot of courage from you to look them in the eye and make that invitation offer, because you've got to get some highly emotional pushback or feedback at that time.
Yeah, definitely using my judgment a lot. I'm like, is this too soon, right? And I've not gotten it right all the time. But there's sometimes I'm just giving them neutral prompts. Hey, can you just go for a walk tonight? That's your only job. Can you do that? They're like, yeah, I can do that. I'm like, okay, let's talk after that's done. Let's talk tomorrow. And then as the cortisol starts to drain and you hear them start to breathe or see them start to come down from the elevated state, then maybe the tougher question, right, of, invite you to consider, why is this happening for you instead of to you, right? That's another wonderful question of like, yeah, you really got to use my judgment as a coach. And we're all coaching people around us on a regular basis, right? Like our friend, our spouse, our kids, our parents, whatever it is. Like, these skills are transferable to many areas of life.
Great advice. Well, Chris, we're coming up on time here, and I want to be respectful of yours. I really appreciate you spending the time diving deep on some of these concepts with me here. As you can tell, I have some questions, and you've been a great sport in answering some of them. Tell people real briefly, where can they find you? How should someone who's interested in what you do, your book, your work with EOS, any of those things, how should they try to connect with you?
Yeah, relentlesschrisjones.com is the primary website. There's links to my EOS site within there. The book, Relentless AF, is on Amazon. I haven't shot the audio yet to do an audible version, but maybe one day. But Relentless Chris Jones. And LinkedIn is my most... I've said no to the other platforms at this point. So we have a newsletter, things like that. You can sign up on the website. That's where, we deliver value that way.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure and include those in the links in the show notes. So make sure and check those out. Thank you, Chris, for your time. Appreciate having you on here, brother.
Always. Thanks for pulling at those threads. And we talked a lot about Relentless, but just remember, just put that sly little grin on your face and say, I got this, baby. And we're going to go do something uncomfortable today and make it better.
Awesome advice. Words of wisdom. Thanks, man. Thanks for joining us this week. Don't forget to take a second and subscribe. Maybe even share this episode with somebody it made you think of, or someone you think would take some value from it. This show is all about uncovering the brilliance and humanity of high performers. And whether those performers have a massive following or a podcast or a book, or they're a business owner, or they're buried somewhere in a corporation, or maybe they're a nonprofit leader, or they don't necessarily have to have a title. I'm really fascinated by people who are passionate and who are doing interesting things. So if you or somebody you know would be a good guest, don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn or send me an email at hello@languageofleadership.io to make that connection. I'll see you next week.